Do you guys have the page? I'm using a different text book.
Yeah.
What page?
Page 275.
Okay, 275. What ois?
Gimel.
Gimel. Okay, so we're learning here about the idea of names.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Perhaps we did not finish Bet. If anyone else remembers, I have a mark in my sefer by Hayinus I Afshar L'Seichel Li Midos She'al Pi Seichel.
Were you at the last year, or you missed one year?
No, I was there, but I was there Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah.
So this is still in Ois Bays?
Yeah.
And where do you have it?
Seichel Li Midos.
Oh, Seichel bli Seichel. So what's the beginning?
It's kind of in the middle of a thought. The Hainu she Afshar L'Seichel Bli Midos She'al Pi Seichel V'Afshar L'Midos She'al Pi HaSeichel Bli Seichel.
I got it. So therefore, the question that he asked was if intellect and emotions are associated with each other and they need each other, his question is, Im Kain, Mao Ahevdul, what's the difference between Shem Adam l'Shem Ish? In other words, like this. Let me now go back. We're talking about the four names given to a human being. Adam, Ish, Gever, and Enosh. In Tanakh, you'll find those four names. Chassidus explains that Adam is the highest, referring to the intellect. Ish is the second, referring to the midos. Gever refers to behavior. And Enosh refers to someone who's barely a human being. That's his only virtues, that he's a human being and nothing else. The Rebbe's question is, if, as explained until now, the logical sequence from the mind to the heart, which we call Ila v'Oluk, cause and effect, is required to have healthy emotions. That's why sometimes a person displays emotions and they're very unhealthy. Anger, ego, whatever. Wild ideas, because they're not thought out well. They're missing the seichel element. So you can be on fire and very passionate, but it has nothing to do with rationale, like Manis Friedman always likes to say. Yesterday was Mother's Day in America. The husband comes home and says, "My dear, I brought you this wonderful gift." It's Mother's Day. Even though my son says, it doesn't say Wives' Day, it says Mother's Day. Here's this gift, because you're the mother of our children. Gewaldig. She says, "My dear husband, I love you so much, except I don't like this gift. This is not, no. You're not giving me a gift. You're giving yourself a gift. You decide with your logic that this is the type of gift that I should have. Well, guess what? You're not talking to me. You're talking to yourself. So you're not gifting me something. You're gifting yourself." Why am I using this as an example? When we talk about seichel and midos, there has to be a relationship. Healthy seichel and healthy midos there's a yachas. The word in Hebrew is yachat. There's a yachas, there's a relationship, an association between the seichel and the midos. And if your seichel goes off on a tangent, because you decide that your wife needs to have this beautiful pair of shoes, and she doesn't care for shoes, she cares for a nice blouse, there's no connection between the two. And so too, the vice versa, beginning with midos, where a person is all inflamed with a certain particular feeling, and the husband is the person who is the recipient says it doesn't make any sense. And we have this very much in relationships. And this has been studied by psychologists. I don't have to tell you. You all are well read and educated. where many times the wife, the woman, doesn't feel loved, but the husband is displaying love to her. The answer is that the seichel that was supposed to be used to understand the wife was not used, so the midah, the emotion displayed by the husband towards the wife, is emotional, but it's lacking intellect. So it goes nowhere. It goes nowhere. And this is part of, by the way, the Chazal was so bright. If you learn the laws of Hilchas Tara, Hilchas Nida, and especially the Svarim that explain more than just the laws, but the atmosphere and the environment, like in the Sefer Taras Yisro, or in the Sefer in the Ramban, in his famous Igeresh Ramban, and in Reishis Chochma. And I learned these things when I was a chosin, and it opened my eyes to a whole different view of marriage and of a woman, of a wife, which, I never learned that in yeshiva until the time came when I was time to get ready to get married. And as I delved into it, and I had, Baruch Hashem, good teachers, and even after marriage, explored these topics with very good, teachers, etc. So, and then my own learning and reading and thinking, it's clear that the Chazal gave an atmosphere, a very healthy atmosphere, for making a connection between the seichel and the midos as they are in the relationship between a husband and wife, between a man and a woman. So, for example, the whole idea, it says, before intimacy, there should be conversation, which involves something spiritual and Torah, whether it be a Dvar Torah, whether it be a Yiddish story. And I'm going to add something it doesn't say, which is a Hasidic tune or a deep, meaningful Jewish tune. Like, come on. You're going into excuse the expression, you're going into a bed together. So, come on, what else do you need besides just the physical contact? Chazal say no. Chazal say no. You need more. You know why you need more? Because otherwise it just becomes animalistic. And even if it's not, gross animalism, but it's the nature of the body. The nature of the body has needs. We know as Yidden, as Torah Jews, that we want every experience to be godly. This is all everything we learn in Musar, Chassidus, and Gemara, and Halacha. You be a Litvak, a Chassid, the Sephardic, it makes no difference. It's all about making the experience more Jewish, more godly, right? So how do you make a physical act like that so godly? So Chazal gave us a recipe, and it works if you use the recipe. And before you engage in the moment of passion, you season the passion by prepping your mind, by prepping it with seichel. Now, if it remains at the level of seichel, it's also problematic. Then we also have a breakdown in a relationship. It needs to go from seichel to midas. And the Chazal worked it out that it works if you go about it, if you go into the intimacy in using seichel to midos, the intimacy comes out very, very special. Because there's a relationship between seichel and midos. And therefore, even when there's a moment of passion and one of the spouses wants to engage in some behavior that's outside of the realm of Jewishness, whether it be halachic or even not halachic, but it's very animalistic, so the seichel says no. And the seichel says to the midah, stop. This is not a healthy midah. This is going beyond the pale. And this happens, it's like I'm articulating this like as though this is a book, and there's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. And here we are with two people laying, in a bed together where there's, just passion. So how do the two work? And the answer is it's through training. That if you train yourself and you work on yourself, and it's a constant work, okay? Like I told you about the 95-year-old, he asks me, can I find him a girlfriend at 95? It never dawned on me until then that a guy at 95 still wants to have a woman with him. 95 years old. The Pirkei Avos says that at the age of 100, it's like you're dead and you don't exist. He's 5 years away. He's only 95. And his passion is burning for a woman. So what does that tell us? It tells us that that's nature. That's nature. But when we learn Torah, we learn Chassidus especially, and we illuminate ourselves, there needs to be a relationship between the Seichel and Midas. So this is just an example that's not in the text here, but like our dear Moshe always likes to concretize everything in something practical. This is a practical thing, where you need to have a relationship between Adam and Ish. So the Rebbe's question to Maamar is, if that's the case, Adam needs Ish, and Ish needs Adam, what's the difference? If I am just an Adam with intellect, like an Einstein, or Aristotle, or one of the geniuses, and we know we found Einstein's letters, and they're now on record, how he writes and treats women is disgusting, and here he is, this genius. Obviously there was a breakdown between his intellectualism and his midos. Okay? You could be the genius of the genius, but you're not a mensch, right? So what does that mean? Well, like it says here in the Maamar, Adam needs Ish, Seichel needs midos. And vice versa, as I've explained before, midos needs Seichel. You gotta have your intimate life directed by Seichel, not just, you're not an animal laying in a bed. And if you are, it's a problem. It's a big problem. And you gotta refine yourself. And you gotta come to understanding there's something greater. Because even when two people already passed, a woman's past menopause and all that, in Zohar and Kodesh and the Holy Zohar and the Sfarim, it says that each time a man and a woman, a husband and wife are together, they create a holy soul. That says in the Holy Sfarim, starting with the Zohar and Kodesh. That means you are having an offspring. You're not having a physical baby, you're having a spiritual baby. And you want that spiritual baby not to be crippled, God forbid, or not to be ill. You want it to be healthy, right? Just like when you were able to have children, you want to have healthy children, healthy that are obviously healthy. So behave like a mensch, because do you want to create such an issue in the world? But I don't see it. Okay, so get in touch with spirituality, become more ruchnius. Stop being such a behemoth and become more of a Jew, of a Yid. Just let go the behemoth. Enough. We've been behemoths all our life. It's time now with the white beard or no white beard. It's time now to grow up a little bit. How long will you be a behemoth? You've been an animal all your life, so now enough. And if you still feel you're a behemoth, you need to learn more Chassidus, more Musar, more Gemara. And you need to verbring more. And at some point, God will have mercy on you and say, He'll put into you something that you'll stop being such a behemoth. So the point is, going back to the Maamar, is that we see that Ish needs Adam and Adam needs Ish. So his question is, if that's the case, why two names? So just use one name. That's where we're at. So Isser, thank you for pointing out to us where we're at, because that gave us the monologue for today. Let's continue. So he says, the Shem Adam, who Hashem Etzem El HaSeichel v'Shem Ish, who Shem Etzem Shel HaMidas. Me'achad Shneim Ke'echad, Hem Seichel v'Midas, Hem Meilas HaMedaber. That's part of the question. Acho Inyan Hu, the Heinem is true. The Seichel v'Midas, Yefshel Hazeh B'loi Zeh, as we explained now at length. It is impossible for there to be proper intellect or proper emotions without each other guiding and supporting each other. Aval imze, nevertheless, hinehem shnei mehusim nivdolim b'mailas hamedaber. Both, each one, are two virtues in the human species. Veheim bali seichel, and they are those that are called intellects. Baalei, like the Baal Habayis, right? Bali Seichel, Ubali Midas, and people who are emotional people. So they are two virtues in two classes that, yes, each one uses the other one, but nevertheless, you point to this person, you say, this is an intellect. And if I need an intellectual, rational answer to a problem, to a dilemma, I'm going to him or her. Why am I not going to my good friend in shul, or to the rabbi maybe for that matter? Because they respond more emotionally, and I need an intellectual answer. And the truth, and vice versa is the truth too. Sometimes someone who's a good friend of yours is very intellectual and can think and doesn't rush to a decision and all that. And you feel at this point you need to have more of a heartfelt gut answer, because the intellectual answer has not gotten you to solve the problem, to deal with the issue. You know, it's like you could dot all the dots and have all the formulas and everything, and the equation is right. When it comes to practical life, it's a big zero. Zero. Nothing changes. Why? Because the answer was just intellect. It did not include in itself the emotional part, because the person giving the answer is incapable, because that's not the type of person he is. And that's why I want to bring to your attention the Rebbe. Many of his answers were, go to Yedidim Umevinim, friends that are Mevinim as well. Now let's for a moment take those two words and strip them. Yedidim, friends. A friend can give you good advice. They're a friend. They mean your best. But they have to also be Mevinim, experts. If they're a friend and an expert in real estate and you need advice about accounting, I'm sorry, it's the wrong department. Or if you need a health issue and you go to a lawyer, sorry. At the same time, a friend, someone who feels, you feel close to them, they feel good to you, so that they really, when they advise you, they're advising themselves. They'll give you the advice that they will give themselves, because they're your real friend. And by the way, as I've said many times, a friend means also someone who will give himself and you musar. So when I went to my mashpia when I was 18 years old in Morristown, and I said, I have a feeling of ego. I'm one of the best students, in the base medrash, and I know that, and I feel that, and I don't like that feeling because it's egotistical. So he told me, find yourself people, a friend or two in base medrash, in the yeshiva, who will really give you musar. But someone who's a friend, in other words, not someone who's giving you musar because they don't like you. Because we have that. There are people, each of us, unless you're a Beinoni or someone very special in character, you have a few enemies, you have a few foes, you have people who don't like your style. But so if they give you musar, they're not coming from the right place. Those are not the ones to give you musar, and you don't want musar for them. You want musar for someone who really loves you, who cares for you. And it hurts them that you are hurt. Okay? So that's the type of yedidim the Rebbe was suggesting, friends. But at the same time, simultaneously, he said, mevinim, with a vava machaber, a conjunction. And people who have an understanding of the situation. And guess what? It's not easy to find such people. You can daven in a shul with 150 people, and how many people could you point to would fall into the category here of yedidim umevinim? Probably you found one or two, you're lucky. Every person in their own category. So, going back to the text, the Rebbe says here, there are Bali Seichel and Bali Midos. There are people who are known their strength is in intellect, and their others, their strength is in emotions. Vishnei Hashem is the Gev. So those are the two names of Adam and Ish. So what's his answer, Chevra? What's his answer to the question that seemingly both need each other? The answer is, sir, you're right, both need each other, but nevertheless, one is stronger in this area, and one is stronger in the other area. One is stronger in Seichel, one is stronger in Midos. Yoini. So therefore, we classify them by the two names, Adam and Ish. Although both need each other, but nevertheless, you were not going to say that Einstein was a Baal Midos. Even if he had good Midos, he was known for his creativity and his genius. I remember in Marin County, there's a city called Fairfax. And I met there a professor, I met somewhere a professor, Richard Webster, I remember his name. And he was from Brooklyn. And he was a Yid. So I wanted to get him involved. And he was a professor at Berkeley, if you know what that means. Berkeley 1960s, Berkeley 1970s. And I started to speak to him. It was like the first time I was speaking to a genius. I mean, I spoke to Reb Yoel Kahn, but Reb Yoel Kahn was a genius who had both. He had Seichel and Midos. That's why I write about in my book. And a lot of people don't know that. They look at him just as a bright genius. He was such a warm person if you really got to know him. A very warm person. But this Professor Webster was this, I could just see him, in the classroom. He was like totally a genius. And I started to talk to him. I managed to get him. We had a dinner in San Francisco at the Hyatt on the Embarcadero, it's called. Big hotel in San Francisco, if you know that, the area downtown, Market Street. And then we made a dinner for Chabad. And I invited him, and he was my guest one time. But, it was obvious. It was like, my idea was to show that even he, who's so genius, and unfortunately he wasn't at that time involved with Yiddishkeit much, had sympathy towards Chabad. So I had him be a guest. I think he was there. But the intellectualism, it was so palpable how that drove him. And that drove everything that he responded with. It was so intellectual. So the fact is, there are Bali Seichel, very Bali Seichel. Now, some of them are more rooted in reality, and some are not rooted. If they're studying the trigonometry and or what are they called? Mathematics, higher level mathematics, and what does it have to do with if you're not going to be flying a plane, what are you going to use trigonometry for? But that's the world they live in. They live in the world of intellectualism, and they get a high from creative genius ideas. Then there are Bali Midos. Bali Midos are people who thrive on emotions. They thrive on a warm niggin. They can start singing a song and just start crying. They can start singing a song and start laughing and start jumping. I remember I was standing once on Sari Yisrael in Geula waiting for a bus. And it dawned on me, I'm standing on the rocks of Yerushalayim. And there were people around. I remember it was twilight time. And I started to dance. Not like a wild nut, but I got really happy thinking that I'm standing on the stones of Yerushalayim. You know what that means? Well, you have to be a little emotional to feel that. You have to allow yourself to go into the emotions. Now, if you are that way, you don't need preparation. It just happened. It happens automatically because you are a Baal Midos. And then we find from time to time, in the rare exception, is to find someone that excels in both. But usually, most people are all either in the category of Seichel or in the category of Midos. Nevertheless, because both use the other strength as well, we put them into the right orientation, into the right category, as he says here in the Maamar. Then he says, we have the two other names. Let's continue in the text. Vishnei Hashem is the Gever ve'Enosh. The two names of Gever and Enosh, Heimrak Shemus HaToyer, they're only descriptive names. Hamitayirim es Mohusei Hashem is the Adam ve'ish. They are descriptive names that express the two essential names. Okay, so the Hebrew, the two essential names are called Avram, Shem Ha'etzem, the essential name, either of intellect, Adam, or Shem Ha'etzem of Midos, but they're both called Shem Ha'etzem. Then we have two names that describe the person, what type of intellect, what type of Midos. They recall with the two names, Gever and Enosh. V'hainu, Shehem HaMoidadim es Kamus Eichusam. They measure the quantity of their quality. The Gever, the word Gever, the name for a human being that is Gever, denotes al Hagvura, al Tagboires Haseichel v'Hamidas. It denotes the overpowering of Seichel and Midos, each in their classification of Adam and Ish. In other words, when you say when you say Gever, there's an expression, right? There's an expression in Hebrew. He is a Gever. Isn't there such an expression? He is a Gever. What does that mean? What? Yeah. What does it say in the Gemara? What does it say in the Gemara? What? Oh, Kol Da'alim Gvar. Right. Thank you. Very good. Kol Da'alim Gvar. This is about when you find a Metzia, you find an object. Whoever's stronger grabs it. Kol Da'alim Gvar. So the word Gvar means like strength. So what is the Rebbe saying here? That the name Gever means that you it's a description of your strength, either in intellect or in midos. In other words, there is the essential quality. Is he an intellect or is he a bal midos? It doesn't yet tell you about Isser. It doesn't tell you yet whether there's strength and passion to it. The name Gever is the name of the human being that displays and manifests strength in either of the categories. And finally, the Enosh, the last of the four names, Enosh, Moira al Chalishus HaSeichel Aminus. It's just the opposite. It's at the end of the pole. It shows weakness. You're a weakling. Whether you're a weakling in Seichel or you're a weakling in Midos. So we call that person Enosh. In other words, and again, you're still a human being. I have to point that out. You're still a human being, but your sense of either Seichel or your sense of Midos is very chalush, very weak. V'zeu chaviv Adam, so he goes back to the opening phrase of the Maamar from Pirkei Avos this week, chapter 3. Beloved is man, shekoyi al nefesh asichlis. Why is man, not you, but even the ordinary human being, why is he chaviv by God, Moshe? Why does God love a human being? Because a human being consists of an intellectual drive, and from that seat of intellectual drive comes free will and healthy choice opportunities. And that's why every human being is chaviv. And I want to tell you something. When you learn this Maamar, even just this part of the Maamar, you won't go around calling goyim trash, bad, and everything else. Like, unfortunately, some of us grew up with, and probably still have it in environments nearby where you live. Because you learn such a Maamar, and the Rebbe is talking here about a human being. Yeah, there are human beings who choose with their free will to be evil and to stab and kill and hurt and they need to be eliminated, and they're going to suffer, and we have to get rid of them. No question about it. But nevertheless, that's their choice. They've chosen to be bad. But Choviv Adam, from God's perspective, God makes a human being have an opportunity to choose, and from that perspective, there is Choviv, there's love. So this isn't a liberal cop-out, we're all lovey-dovey and, we're going to not have the capital punishment, and I'm not taking political positions, because the Torah talks about capital punishment, so therefore there's capital punishment. But to get the capital punishment in the Torah, you have to have so many Sheva Chakiras or Drishas, the Gemara in Sanhedrin and Shulchan Aruch, and the Gemara says, a bezdin that killed someone more than once in 70 years was called Katlanis. A killing bezdin. That means they were too, what's the word in English? They were too quick and rash in their decision. Because if you do the Chakiras or Drishas, and the Rambam enumerates the details, hardly ever can you find someone guilty of capital punishment. And that's why the Gemara says, if a bezdin did it more than once in 70 years, it was called a killing bezdin. In other words, free will is such a gift that God gives humanity. And, I overheard my daughter, my grandson say something about either some non-Jews or some non-religious people, which was, negative. And my daughter, I heard her say, and I can hear, she says, that's the choice they made. That doesn't mean they're bad people. They weren't religious. I probably talking about, because for the little kids growing up, everyone has yarmulkes or sheitel or tichel, and that's what a yid is. And then they see you bring someone home who's not religious, they say they're a goy. And if you live, in a community like mine, or probably Geula, they're goyim. No, they're not goyim.
Even worse, you can call them Nazis.
Nazis and all that. They're not. And it's not just they're not because I have a relative. No, the facts are, you have your facts wrong. Simply wrong. And I don't care if you're a million, your entire communities. And the truth is, those leaders, Rabbonim and Rebbes and Gedolim, that were on the right page, didn't speak this way and didn't teach this way. Yes, Yoini. You wanted to say something?
No, I didn't have a question. You answered it.
So that's basic. Yes, Yoinison.
You're talking about Einstein came to America, and he was here for a number of years before he died. And he got a group of black students, and he was teaching them mathematics and physics. And at that time, it was unheard of to give blacks higher education.
Right.
So, Einstein, even though he was such a genius, he had a heart. He felt.
Okay. I'm thank you for that. I'd never heard that. That's a good piece of data to know. But nevertheless, Yonason, you would put him in the classification, the category of an intellect, a Baal Seichel, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean,
Right. But did you guys in college? Did you guys have a professor that you could remember that was like a flute and tootin' intellect that had nothing to do with reality? I don't know. You did, right?
Sure. Professor Fuzar. Sure.
Yeah.
He would shuffle through his papers, didn't know what was what, but he was a genius. Absolute genius.
Right.
You go into hhis desk and you couldn't see him because piled high with papers and books, and he was literally, he was a genius, but, totally not Misudar.
Right.
Just all over the place.
They say...
I had a genetics teacher.
What? Go ahead.
I had a genetics teacher. Never changed clothes to home quarter. Wore the same clothes every day. He had chalk all over his suit. He didn't care about anything but genetics.
I
You know-
tell people that in eight years of higher education, 8 years in a public university, I had 2 professors that ever mentioned God.
Wow.
2.
Wow. Yeah,
Call to God either.
you know, they say about, I don't want to say who, but one of the great Rabbanim actually out of Chicago. In his younger years, he came to yeshiva with 2 different color socks. And there were times he would take the train while he lived in New York, and he would miss a stop. He would go all the way to the end. And he came back, and the mashgiach in the Beis Medrash cursed him out because he was a Rebbe. He says, the students are waiting for you. He says, oh, I missed my stop. But, yeah, anyway, Chevra, I'm glad that, I hope the connection was good. I asked Hashem for mercy, so it's better than the other days. So right away, Hashem answered the tefillah. I hope it'll continue. I'll be back if it's Hashem at the end of the week. But this week we're still over here. So have a great day. Zayt Matzliach. I hope the shir today gave us what to think about, both the beginning of the shir and the end of the shir. We're talking with each other. We're all adults. And we could use this to become better people to our spouses and others, and Hashem will help us. Zay gesund to everyone. Take care. Shalom. Yes. Yes.
I watched the video from yesterday, and it was perfect.
Which one are you talking about?
The video from yesterday, where it kept freezing. When you recorded it, was perfect.
Really?
Yes. I watched the whole thing. Didn't freeze it not once.
Okay. That's a Bsura Tova. Good news. Baruch Hashem. Sei gesund. L'chaim, everyone. Take care.